So these, after this session is over, if you think of something you want to get back to me about, or you want to give me a comment, you can always do that beyond this session. And I'll encourage you to talk in the chat throughout my session, whether you're talking to each other or talking to me. And then hopefully Roxana will help me. If there's a question directed at me that I missed, she can let me know. But to kick us off, I think in the times of COVID, I always want to know how people are feeling at the beginning of my sessions. It's we're all going through a roller coaster of emotions. Some days are better than others. In the springtime, I would look out my window in Cairo and I would see these beautiful flowers, and they would put me in a good mood. But I didn't always wake up in a good mood. So I'm just asking you how you're feeling today. Just give me one word. So bright, nervous, yeah, energetic, positive. Maida, congratulations on your PhD. I know that it's a little bit of an anticlimax when you get it. It's like you've been working all this time, then you get the PhD and nothing happens. So yeah, positive, great, overwhelmed, blessed, good. When I first started asking my students, how are you feeling today? And they would say good, I said, that's not what I'm asking. I'm actually asking how you're feeling today. So sometimes, I'm not asking so that you say alhamdulillah, of course, alhamdulillah, but also like, how are you feeling otherwise? Grateful, motivated, good. There's very few people who said overwhelmed, which is interesting. One person, only Sylvia. Uh, Usually I get a lot of focus, delighted. Okay. I usually get a lot of people saying they're overwhelmed, but maybe you guys are a bit calmer than the people at AUC. Hopeful. Hopeful is a good place to be. Excited, peaceful, focused. Hungry. Go get something to eat. It's still an hour to go. Happy, inspired, motivated by the new challenge. Okay, that's great. That's a very positive way of looking at it. Thinking of deadlines. Yes. I heard the student who was talking about. I don't know. Someone is saying they can't see the full screen. I don't know how to fix that problem, but maybe Suleiman can help out with that. One of the things, fresh after seeing the flowers, that's great to hear. One of the things one of the students was talking about is really important about people coordinating the schedule so that students don't have multiple midterms on the same day online or even overlapping at the same time, because sometimes people will not notice that. It's much more complex for us to, as teachers to manage this online. Okay, I'm going to move on. Um, and just to let you know a little bit more about who I am, so I work at the Center for Learning and Teaching, so I support faculty in teaching online. And when COVID happened, because I have expertise in e-learning, I was supporting them with how can you, not only how to use your learning management system to be online, but also just generally, how do you design interactive online experiences? How do you design spaces where students can feel like they can learn, and how do you not overwhelm students with too much assessment? How do you in this time of trauma, because students are going through a trauma, the whole world is going through a traumatic experience where time management and thinking cognitively is harder. It's a higher cognitive load on people. So how do you make sure they still learn while understanding the fear and the concern and the anxiety, and some people having depression in the midst of all this time? So that's what I do in my main job. And I also, like Roxana said, I co-facilitate a space called Equity Unbound. This has lots of different functionalities, but one of the most recent things we did with Equity Unbound is to develop community building resources. I'm going to put the link to in the chat. So I already know what you teach because most of you have renamed yourself. Thank you, Roxana, for doing that for me. And then I wanted to ask you, what's your biggest concern today? So if you have a particular concern that you want to share, could you type it in the chat? And then I'll hope that maybe I'll be able to address that concern. At AUC, people were concerned about community building. And so I'm going to put a link here to the resource that I created. It's an open resource. I worked on it with a lot of different people, and it's organized into like warm-up activities, introductory activities, how to take a synchronous activity and make an asynchronous version of it, and things like that. You're worried about the technology, okay. Not to live virtually forever. Oh, I hope not. I hope no, we don't live virtually forever. Assessment in the hybrid mode, yes, it's much more complex, of course. Somebody was sending me a private message. What's the name of the trees that I was there? It's called flame trees. This is an American person who told me this. I don't know in Egypt what we call it. You're worried about long-term effects on students. Uzma, one of my best friends was Pakistani. Her name was Uzma. She's in the US now. Yes, I am concerned about long-term effects on students, but especially younger students. Like if you have children in, I have a 9-year-old, and I'm worried about the long-term effect on her well-being and her socio-emotional development. But of course, college students are also very vulnerable, I think, emotionally, if they're still in their late teens. Keeping students engaged and happy is very important. And balancing family and work. Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. I think any of us who's a parent who takes care of the kids, I mean, my husband is a surgeon, so he doesn't do a lot on that front. So I take a lot of that burden. So if you're a working academic and you have a child at home who's not going to school or who's going to school, but things are, up and down, my school, my kids opens and then closes. So you never know what's going to happen next week or even tomorrow. Assessment and asynchronous teaching, that makes sense. How to maintain quality of content being taught, I agree. Language learning in online asynchronous mode. Yeah, asynchronous is very complex for language learning if you want to be teaching them like conversational skills, right? How are you going to learn to be in a conversation asynchronously? Okay, I'm going to move on. This was the session description that was sent to you, and my understanding after speaking to Roxana a few times is about you have to juggle these 3 different modes. And I'm going to talk about how to ensure that both students get the learning outcomes, but you also don't get overloaded. So we've done the check-in and intros. I'm going to do a format right now for creative problem solving, and I'm going to need some volunteers for it. So start thinking if you're willing to be a volunteer. I'm going to ask Suleiman to give you access to be co-host or something so you can unmute yourself easily. And then we're going to do another exercise in breakout rooms with a wicked question and lesson planning. Anyway, don't worry about the terms, but we're going to go through a process of trying to help you kickstart the process of thinking about how to deal with this complex situation that you're coming up on. And one of the things that doesn't happen all the time in universities is what's called parity of participation. This concept, Desmond Tutu has a nice way of talking about it, that he's not interested in picking up the crumbs of compassion thrown from the table of someone who considers himself their master. I want the full menu of rights. Both you as the teacher with your institution and the students with you as the teacher need to have some kind of, if possible, say in what happens to you. And a lot of the times, especially in times of COVID, because it's a crisis, there's some top-down decision making that we just have to accept. Then we want to figure out how to create our own menu and choose our own ingredients for what we want to do in our own online courses. So when AUC moved online and we were told people were told to use Blackboard and to record their lectures, people who have seminar style classes came to us and said, so now I have to record lectures, but I don't lecture. I'm like, of course you don't have to record lectures if you don't lecture. Figure out what your course philosophy is, what your teaching philosophy is, and then figure out how to do it online. If you don't know how to do it, come to us and we'll tell you, but don't accept that this is the only way to do things. Usually Centers for Learning and Teaching will help you with the broad, these are the 10 things that 90% of people need, but if you're one of the 10%, there will be other ways. You just need to figure those out. And the community building resource that I posted in the chat has ideas for things to do like that. I don't know. I think Roxana already includes it in other places. So just recognizing that some courses are more content centric and some are more process centric. The courses that are more content centric are easier to take online in a more straightforward way. The process centric usually needs a little bit more thinking. And again, the teacher centric, probably you can imagine how to do it online, and the learner centric takes a little bit more thought. And then, of course, sometimes we make decisions based on pedagogy and sometimes on social justice. And in reality, in this case, you want to keep both in mind, both pedagogy and social justice. So it's kind of a tricky situation. So I'm going to use today processes. My teaching is very process-centric and my workshop style is very process-centric. I'm going to use something called liberating structures. Has anyone ever heard of the liberating structures or attended sessions where I was doing liberating structures in Amical workshops? So these are basically, I'm looking at the chat. Yes, Roxana, of course. Okay. All right. So these are basically ways of structuring conversations. When you have a conversation with a group of people, like 20 or 30 people, and you just have an open dialogue, there will always be particular people who talk and they dominate the conversation, and then everyone else is probably quiet. You can make an effort to have everyone participate, but it's kind of mechanical. But with liberating structures, it's a way to have very lively participation with groups of any size and try to include every voice in the conversation. So I'm going to try some of these with you today. I use them a lot in my workshops and my teaching, and it makes these meetings more effective, and it also encourages sort of innovation and creative ideas and creative problem solving. So I'm going to use these three today. One of them is called TRIZ, which is about stopping counterproductive behaviors and making space for innovation. I'm going to use one called Wicked Questions and one called Minceworks. You don't have to worry about these names, but it's just to let you know that liberating structures, you can go and look for them elsewhere and discover new ones if you like the ones we're using today. And you can later go look at the full description and see a sample video demo if you decide to do this with your students, because I've done it with my students really successfully. So normally I would do this activity in breakout rooms where different groups are working on different things. But for today, I'm going to do it what's called fishbowl style. Well, I'll ask 3 to 5 people to join me in the middle of the room and speak and be the participants, and we'll do it and everyone else can watch while we do it. So I need 3 to 5 people to volunteer. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for a minute and ask people to say I volunteer in the chat, and then I will ask Suleiman to please give them co-host access so that they can participate in this conversation. And if you don't volunteer, I'm going to call on you. So please volunteer so that I don't I don't call on you. Don't be like students. Okay, thank you, Abdul Jalil Khan. Suleiman, could you make him co-host, please?
Sure, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Okay, and Musarrat Shahid, thank you. And Sayyida Khadija Burhan, but she sent me a private message. If you could make her co-host. Can I have one more person? These are 3, which is okay, but if I have 4, it's even better. Yeah, you don't know what you're gonna do yet, but you don't know what you're gonna do yet. But I need the volunteers to volunteer anyway.
Yeah.
Were you gonna suggest Maida? Yay! Yeah. Thank you, Maida.
You got the name out
Sufyan.
Of me. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking too. I was like looking at her, but she can't tell that I'm looking at her. Yeah. And Sufyan, physics Sufyan as well.
Okay, all right, great. We have a good team.
Can you please make them all co-hosts? Thank you. Yeah. All right, perfect. So I'm going to now describe the process to you really quickly. And then we're going to go through it with these stars. Okay, so the process, TRIZ is just an abbreviation for a Russian term that I cannot pronounce, which doesn't matter. It's just a way of solving problems by going the opposite direction of what we normally do. So now we have a group of 5 people. What we're going to do, first of all, each one of them will think individually for a minute, and then we will think together as a group. First of all, we will make a list of all that we can do to make sure that you achieve the worst result imaginable with respect to our top strategy or objective. And I'm going to set a strategy or objective for us, but we're going to try to achieve the opposite of it. Okay, so that's first of all, we make that list. Don't worry, I'll facilitate this whole conversation. And then when we go through the list, we ask ourselves, is there anything that we actually do that belong to this list? So this is actually counterproductive behaviors that we actually do even though we know we shouldn't do them. And then going through that list, how do you remove these, how do you counter these counterproductive behaviors? How do you stop them so that we can stop these undesirable results? Okay, this will make sense as I explain it. So first of all, I assume, like Roxana was saying at the beginning, that our goal is to produce courses that are equitable among the in-person students, the synchronous students, and the asynchronous learners. Right? This is something that we want to make sure that they all have access to the same learning outcomes or learning experience, at least to some extent. So to do TRIZ, our anti-goal is to produce courses that are inequitable between in-person, synchronous, and asynchronous learners. So this basically means that individually, we will first make a list of how do you achieve the worst result imaginable with respect to the top strategy or objective. And then we'll pick from those ones that we actually do in practice, okay? So I'm going to create a new slide, and I'm going to ask the co-hosts who are now in the fishbowl to just take a minute, and everyone can take a minute, even if you're not one of the people who are speaking, is to think about this question. Make a list of all you can do to make your courses inequitable between the 3 kinds of students. Okay, just take a minute to think about this on your own before we share so that you have maybe 2 or 3 things in mind. Okay. Are the people who are in the fishbowl ready to start sharing now?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to do something that helps a little bit with when there's a lot of people in the room. I'm going to do something in my video settings called hide non-video participants so that I can see just the small number of people who are currently, oh, never mind. I'm having trouble finding it. But anyway, it helps a little bit sometimes. All right. So folks who are in the fishbowl, who volunteered to be in the fishbowl. Musarat, would you like to share first?
Yeah, can I type or should I just say?
I will type. You talk and I will take notes.
I
Go
think
ahead.
a distribution of time, when you are not equally distributing time and dividing it between the three or amongst the three groups, then I think that is one way that you can be inequitable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. 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 Maida, would you like to share one?
Yes, so only producing materials for one mode, not all three. So either it will be synchronous, asynchronous, or face-to-face.
Okay. Abdul Jalil.
Different type of questions you may ask from the students.
So you're saying the type of questions you may ask from students may privilege one group over another?
Definitely.
Okay. Okay, and Sufyan, you were also one of our volunteers, and I think there was one other person. Sufyan, go ahead.
Basically, being a physicist, the interaction which you have in the lab would be different for all three.
Yes, and then could possibly be different quality.
Yes.
Okay, and then Sayyida, right? Am I saying your name properly?
Sayyida Khadija Burhan. Yes. Using a limited type of assessment techniques.
Yes. Thank you for that one. All right. Are there other things that you guys had that you'd like to add?
Yes, class participation.
I'll let you talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. So
go ahead.
Class participation. Types of class participation.
Okay.
I think that when you are, no matter how fair you want to be with the three, the face-to-face will always take the lead because you are dealing with them on campus, face-to-face, and body language, of course, important. So I think that is one thing that I will be really sensitive about.
Okay, there's quite a few nice things coming in from the chat as well, but I'll finish listening to the fishbowl. Any others from the folks from the volunteers?
The only place where I feel there will be more non-synchronous would be the people who are not really online or in campus. The third group would be marginalized because they are receiving materials, they're receiving assignments, yes, but they're not having that experience which you have discussions in class. Recorded lectures do not convey that.
Yes, exactly. I agree.
Having a limited teacher-centered teaching approach.
Yes. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to look at the chat because there's quite a few nice things also coming in from the chat. So Sarwan Abbasi, whoops. Roxana, can you, oh no, it's okay. I'll just have to do it myself. It's okay.
No,
here it is.
tell me, I can read out the, if you
no,
want.
No, it's easier actually for me to copy and paste. Okay. You can open my slides, but it's okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
So can you read out what I just posted? That would help. The last, assume. Yeah.
That everyone has a good infrastructure, don't interact, don't plan, no feedback on assessments. Don't give feedback on assessments would be one way of, but it would apply to all three, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it could apply to all three, but sometimes people will do it for some people, but not others, right?
Yeah. So not responding to students' emails and communicating inequitably, don't communicate with one group, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think those are the main things, that not giving feedback on assessments or timely feedback on assessment.
Yeah.
And not interactive, not planning, not thinking. Those were the key ones. I think you've got them all.
Yeah, I think I've got them all now. All right.
Maybe,
if there's anything that I forgot, yes, go ahead. Yes.
Maybe the way through which a student is going to reproduce whatever is assigned to him or her. Mean to say in form of presentation or in form of submission of some report or in form of discussion in this way.
I'm not sure I understand. I'm not sure I understand.
Same assignment which is given to the student, and student need to reproduce it or reply it through different modes.
So how does that create inequity?
Just like one student is giving presentation, other student is submitting a report, and another student is just like discussing it.
Okay, so you're saying in that way it's not fair, or it is fair?
Definitely, it has different modes of evaluation, so it's not equitable.
Okay. Yeah. If they don't have a choice and each one of them is assigned only one way of doing things, then it's different from the others. Yes.
Yes.
Not their choice, but different. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very good point. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry if there's anything I didn't consider, but I would encourage you to go back to your departments and go through this exercise in a longer amount of time if you have it. So now to ask my panelists to do. Go ahead, Musarat, yes.
Okay, so I think that assessment for learning will also be compromised, because assessment for learning gives you a way forward, a feed forward for teachers. So I feel that that lapse, if you are doing it online and if you're doing it in asynchronous mode, then it really does have an effect that needs to be taken into account.
Okay, so clearly I would say, let me know if I'm wrong, that most of you are most concerned with the asynchronous learners, that they will be disadvantaged. And some of you, I think, noticed that the synchronous might be disadvantaged because they're not really being completely included in the face-to-face classrooms. That this will probably happen. Okay, now I know you haven't started teaching yet, right? But which of these things do you believe happens at FCC? Maybe it happens in your own teaching, or maybe because sometimes someone said something that you hadn't thought about and you realize, oh, actually I do that sometimes. Or it happens a lot in your department, because sometimes you need a little bit more time to reflect, to think, oh, actually I do that thing. So I'll just give people a minute to look at the list, whether you're in the panel or not. If you're not in the panel, you can type in the chat. But if you're in the panel, I'd like you to discuss amongst yourselves which of these things are things that we actually do and what can we do about them to change it. But first of all, which ones do we do? Let's just find things that we do.
We have taught half of a semester online and the summer semester online.
Right, so you can reflect on that. But did you have the three modes? Did you have the three modes of students as well?
We had the two modes only. That was online and asynchronous.
Right.
And the thing which I felt was that in the asynchronous mode, it was very difficult to verify whether the student had done collaboration on his assignments or not.
Okay, so that actually wasn't in our list, but it's something to keep in mind. You mean academic integrity?
Academic integrity.
Yeah, more complex. For each mode, it's different, right? Like what you're able to do for each mode is completely different.
Because in class, if they are face-to-face, you can have a quiz right there or a presentation, and you immediately can, from experience, point out who is doing what.
Yes, that's true. That's true. All right. Okay, which of these things might actually be happening in your classes? Was someone saying something? Okay, I think someone's unmuted.
Someone is just telling someone to close the door.
Okay, thanks. Timely feedback is difficult when it's a large group of students. I agree with that. I'm going to tell you very quickly what I do with this thing. Like if I have a large number of students and a lot of little assignments, what I try to do is I give myself a simple rubric for the small assignments that are worth 1 or 2%, so that I can give them feedback quickly. You did it, you didn't do it. And then for the more complex assignments that are worth maybe 15%, those are the ones that I have a rubric and I have a more complex way of giving feedback. Because sometimes if you give the if you make it more difficult for yourself to give feedback, then you're not going to give feedback in a timely manner. That's really important. And sometimes people like to give oral feedback on assignments or via WhatsApp, or sometimes I think some learning management systems have a way for you to give oral feedback. So that's good. Okay, so Nayab is saying 11 and 16, assume everyone has good infrastructure, and 16, academic integrity is more complex. Yes. Abdul Jalil, do you want to talk about the ones that you feel like sometimes do happen? You're saying 2, 3, 13, and 14. Do you want to talk about this out loud, Abdul Jalil?
Sorry.
You wrote 2, 3, 13, and 14.
2, 3,
right?
13, and 14. I may read it there.
Yeah. Yeah, just say how does that work?
Only
you were saying the type of yeah, go ahead.
Only producing material for one mode, not all. Just like preparing for one class, in a given class, a questionnaire or a quiz in a different way. So one group of students are facing one type of questions, other students are facing another type of questions.
Yeah, yeah.
In that way.
And then several people have here assuming that students have good infrastructure. That's a really important one, which I think a lot of us make by mistake. And the academic integrity one seems to be a popular one that a lot of people are thinking about. You also had 14. Yeah, that's having different modes of evaluation, but that they don't choose which ones they get.
This is just like giving assignment to the student, but it's more applicable in case of online teaching, as compared to face-to-face.
Yes, yes, and definitely any limitation, like when you limit both the number 9, which is the limited teacher-centered teaching approach, and the one where it's like limiting the types of assessment techniques, that I think Musarrat was saying, or Saida, those things make it more difficult to achieve equity between students. Someone was asking in the chat, what do I mean by equity? Go ahead, Musarrat, go ahead.
Okay, so I feel that when you say no feedback on assessments, the point on 12, I think that it's not, for me, it's not about no feedback. It is about the different time that the feedback is going to be conveyed or relayed. I feel that it's very important. Face-to-face classes, you give feedback and you receive feedback, you know, if the whatever you've said. So I feel that in that mode where it's an online, you've given feedback, but if the student has read it, has understood what you have tried to convey or not, that is super important for me, because I feel that, you know, when they are face to face, I can make them understand this is exactly what I mean. But online, it's a sort of a back and forth, which sometimes is non-productive.
Right, right. I agree with you.
Can I add something?
Yes, of course.
When in March we went for this online teaching, all my materials that I had prepared for the semester were for only face-to-face teaching. So that was the biggest hurdle for me for the first 1 week, to think what my students will be, how my students will be reacting to these activities and materials, and how I can do it online. So that was a challenge for me. And at times the teacher who has been teaching in face-to-face classrooms doesn't realize what will work in an online setting. So that needed me to learn a lot and to research a lot to bring my material up to the mark, to make it better for the students. So that was one of the hurdles that I faced immediately while going online.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great point. And I think what you're also talking about, which I think wasn't mentioned necessarily here, but is important, is how do you make space to listen to the reactions of your students to what you're doing, right? Like you're trying something, you think it's going to reach them, you don't know their reaction, you can't usually see their faces, you don't have, it's harder for them to come to your office or to meet you and talk to you before class or after class, and you need to sort of build in that time because it's not going to happen automatically. And Hera Khalid from chemistry was talking about individual feedback being challenging, but then having checkpoints in questions in the lecture to ensure they get the concepts and trying to deliver that in asynchronous. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit in the next section, is that if you're going to be doing sort of checkpoint activities where you're checking in that students understand something, these are things you can create the quiz one time. It's the same quiz, the same questions that you use when you're, oh, you can't hear me? You can't hear me?
Oh, no, she might have a internet issue. So please continue.
Okay. All right. So thank you. So, but maybe she can leave it. Can someone just tell her in the chat? Because if she can't hear me, she can't hear me saying this. Could someone just tell her to just maybe leave and come back? That will probably solve the problem. Usually does with computers. um, the thing that I do the same quiz with the same questions and run it, and the asynchronous students, or you have like a test bank with randomized questions and answers, so that the people who are asynchronous are getting different questions from each other, so it's more difficult to collaborate, and still give them like not a limited 5-minute time, but maybe limiting within one day or something, because obviously their internet connection may be on and off, assuming they have some internet, not zero. This is the tricky thing. I'm assuming they get internet at some point, but maybe the electricity cuts sometimes or something like that. And then the other students will do it in the class, the synchronous and the face-to-face. So you're not doing double work for yourself. You're not doing 3 different quizzes. You're doing the same assessment that works for all the 3 students, and you're running it on the same day. But because you're doing this extra step of randomization and maybe a question bank where not everyone is getting exactly the same questions in the same order, it reduces the ability to collaborate. And then the other thing is, if the questions require giving your opinion and giving using critical thinking or problem solving in creative ways, you can modify the numbers in a problem solving question so that not everybody gets the same number, so their final answer will be different even though it demonstrates the same learning outcome. And this helps prevent the collaboration that you don't want. On the other hand, you could create an assessment that does require pair collaboration, and the ones who are asynchronous can call each other on the phone, and it would be a pair assignment, and in the class they can be a pair assignment, and in the synchronous they can go to breakout rooms in pairs. So it's about thinking about what can you do that could work in several different contexts without having to create 3 different assignments. And then the other thing is, maybe sometimes all of your assessments, the important assessments, can be done asynchronously in the first place. So one example of that is like a take-home exam. Take-home exam assumes everybody's home, they have access to the internet, it's open book, open notes, open everything, and make it in a question that cannot be collaborated on because each person has to include some element that is their own choice. And then you don't have to create 3 different assessments. So instead of having a face-to-face proctored exam and then some other option for the online students, if you do it asynchronous take-home exam for everybody, then you're ensuring equality, even not even just equity. So I know this is more difficult to develop for some courses than others, especially introductory STEM courses. But I think if you as a department get together and start, you will find 1 or 2 people in your department who have some experience with this, who can help others. How do you develop a good take-home exam? And we have on our AUC CLT website a lot of slides about how to go about these things and a lot of resources if you want to check them out. So I can see from here all of these things that you have listed, and what I'm going to encourage you to do, usually I would ask you to do it right now, and I think if someone knows which of these things they would prioritize to try to ensure equity among students, you can type in the chat, these are the things I will definitely try to do in the future. And I'm going to move on just for the sake of time. Thank you so much to my panelists for volunteering and expressing, and everyone else who's been also active in the chat. All right, so there's also something in the liberating structures called wicked questions. And the wicked question is just a question where you're aspiring to achieve 2 different things simultaneously, but they appear to be paradoxes, but they're actually complementary. You want them both, but it's difficult to achieve them both at the same time. So for example, one example from parenting is how do you raise your child to be independent and at the same time loyal to the family. Sometimes when you try to do one or the other, you're going to lose the other, but you want them both to happen. So the example that I think is important for us is we've talked about equitable and inequitable learning. So how do we ensure equitable learning for the three modalities, while at the same time ensuring that the faculty workload is manageable rather than as if you're teaching three courses instead of one? I'm sure this is a question that's high on your radar. And so the question that came in from the chat, I think it was Daniel who was asking, what's the difference between equity and equality? Is this image. Can anyone tell me what do you see when you look at this image? What's the key thing that stands out for you? The panelists already have the mic, so if you want to talk.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Equality means giving the same task to the people, irrespective of their abilities or their capacities. And equity means that assign the task according to the objectives, but also keep in mind the abilities and the capacity of the person who has to perform the task. So that is seen.
One is
And
the
it's also, sorry, it's also giving the same test to the fish and the elephant.
Yes, I love that picture, but it's copyrighted, so I don't use it.
Yeah.
But that's a very good one. Yeah. Right. It's fish and elephant and monkey, and you say jump up on the tree, for example. How's the fish and the elephant going to do it, right? And the elephant and the fish also, they have their abilities and they have their environment. So in our case, other than the three modalities, which are a very clear distinction between the three kinds of students, but there are also students who have anxiety. There are students who have a home environment that's difficult. There are students who have responsibilities for their siblings, for example. There are a lot of other inequalities and differences between students that we need to sort of account for. There's a lot of very interesting stuff happening in the chat as well. Matching the needs, yes.
Resource
yes,
allocation.
making sure everyone has the same, yes. Go ahead.
Resource allocation to support those who need more resources.
Yes,
just like
exactly. You don't want to give everyone equal resources. You see who needs more resources to be able to reach the same apple over here. Yeah. One of the things that I think is also important when looking at this image, one of my students actually noticed this, that the person in the middle on the left-hand side, the person in the middle is jumping, because even though the apple is far away, it's not that far away. So he feels like maybe if I put an effort, I'll try. But the yellow guy, he's not moving at all. It's so far away, out of his reach, he's not even trying. And I think we see that sometimes with our students, right? That there are some students who are struggling, but they're making an effort, and others who are like totally not doing anything at all. And we may think they're lazy, but it's possible that it's so outside their reach that they don't even know where to start. So we need to think about, the apples are the learning outcomes. And so I have, I love equal opportunity versus equal treatment. I like that. I love what everyone is saying here. You guys are wonderful. I want to say something. Speaking of the apples being the learning outcomes, sometimes someone doesn't want an apple, so I gave this guy an orange. Because sometimes, and this I've actually said to some of my students, I know my course is in our institution, liberal arts, just like you. My course is in the core curriculum, so it's not part of their major. So sometimes they don't want to get an A in my course. It's not the most important course they're taking. And I say, and that's totally okay. If you're interested and you want to pass, the ones who are falling behind, obviously, I don't say this at the beginning of the semester, but if someone's falling behind and I say, are you trying to get a C or a D or a B? Tell me what you want to get and I'll tell you what's the minimum you need to do to get there. Sometimes this is what they want. I would like to have high expectations of everyone, but there's no need for everyone to stress themselves. And sometimes when they try to catch up, they do the wrong thing that's worth 5% rather than the important thing that's worth 20%, So sometimes it's important to make sure that they get what they need, not only what we think they need. Obviously, we can't have different learning outcomes for different people. Some people want to learn and some people want the grades. That's very true, actually. And one of the things I used to do for my classes in the spring, because we also had Ramadan in the middle of it, right? I think you probably were also teaching at the same time. And I would say if you cannot make it to the synchronous sessions, either because you're asleep because it's Ramadan or because your connectivity is bad that day, the alternative assignment is this. So I plan my course so that either you come to class or you do this alternative assignment, and they both meet the same learning outcomes. And so it means that if someone has the ability to come to the class, they do an activity in the class that is similar in terms of learning outcome to what the ones who can't make it. And I don't have to redesign it every single time. It's just a one way of doing it. Like if there was an article, you reflect on the article and you comment on someone else, or something very straightforward like that. Yeah, I love this visual too. But to be honest, oranges don't grow on apple trees. We know that, right? So it's nice to have apples and oranges next to each other. Oranges don't grow on apple trees, but maybe think about, maybe someone else has an orange orchard next to your apple orchard. This means to me, like if you are sharing amongst yourselves, like if you have 10 people who teach chemistry, maybe one person has recorded his or her lecture for something, and you've recorded something different you can share. Maybe someone knows how to design open book exams. Maybe someone maybe someone has an activity that you can integrate into your course or make it an option for your students so that you have both the apples and the oranges available. And the other thing to keep in mind is that there's, especially for introductory courses, a lot of open educational resources. Roxana, I know you have some listed in your website. I did not get a chance to look at them, but maybe you can just point faculty to them later. The other option is sometimes, occasionally, not always, to put all the apples on the floor. So it doesn't matter how tall you are. Can you imagine this picture? So if all these apples were on the floor, so I'm just gonna draw this like really quickly right now. I'm gonna put apples here and here and here. So it doesn't really matter how tall you are, you can still reach the apple. So sometimes our way of making sending learning to students is making it not accessible to everyone, but something like a take-home exam treats them all the same. Doesn't matter how good your internet connection is. It's a take-home exam. You have 3 days to do it, or 3 hours, just a longer period of time, and then you're fixing that problem. And this is more of a systemic social justice, so that you don't have to solve one problem at a time, but rather try to solve the problem on the lowest level, on the basic foundational level, so you don't have to do it. For me, that is making the key assessments and assignments asynchronous. Just treat everyone as if they're home and they have that internet connection, and that way you're designing for everyone, for the assessments, not for the interactivity, obviously, because the interactivity for people who can be in class, who can be synchronous, you need to give them that, because they have that opportunity. You don't want to lose that opportunity. This is where you need to think about, how will I interact with the asynchronous folks. Yeah, you need to have strong teeth to chew the apple. I have a story once where someone was giving a beggar in the street an apple, and the beggar swore at them because they're like, I don't have teeth to eat the apple. So that's also really important. Yeah. All right. And then if social aspects of learning are important, and in some courses they're more important than others, right? So don't forget to make sure that your synchronous online students are able to participate in the class discussions. And one of the things is, if you have a face-to-face class, if you're discussing with the entire class, how are you going to know if the synchronous students want to participate? Is it easy for their voice to be heard in the class, or is it not? If it's not easy for the synchronous students to be part of the class discussion and show up on the projector so that other people can see them, you may want to have a teaching assistant or a student who's helping connect them to someone who's in the classroom, checking what's happening online and making sure the students are okay, or a teaching assistant who is online with the students and doing the interactivity with them while the teacher is handling the classroom. I don't know if you have the resources to do that, but you could have a student who's mature and it's a different student each time helping you with that, and you just meet with them and help them prepare. And maybe that could be part of their participation grade, that they're helping out. And don't forget that you can design asynchronous interaction with the asynchronous students using their phones, like things on WhatsApp or asynchronous online discussions, or Google Documents, which I know also you're familiar with. So those are all things that they can be doing, and not every single thing really needs the immediacy of face-to-face to be interactive, because asynchronous gives you more room for critical thinking and reflection, doing research to support what you're doing. Making sure that everyone participates. In a face-to-face classroom, you lose track of time. I'm losing track of the chat. If there's something important, Roxana, that you want me to stop and do, we can do that. Now, I know that Foreman Christian College has some really good templates for you to work with, and I'm going to open one of them, and I'm going to encourage you to go into breakout rooms and work on one of these together. And this is the thing, right? And Roxana, I think, modified this slightly to think if this learning objective can be met for all three modalities in the same way, or do you need to have different ways? And sometimes you will find that something works well for the face-to-face and the synchronous, but not the asynchronous, or something will work for both of the online synchronous and asynchronous students, but not the face-to-face. But try as much as possible to find things that, oh, actually that thing, it will work for all three of them. There might be three different ways you can do it. And if one of the ways works for all of them, then use that way because it's going to be less work for you, right? So I'm going to go back to here. This is the one we're talking about. So just to keep in mind with your essential learning outcomes, because I think that's also important because sometimes we have learning outcomes and then they grow and then we have too many things that we're trying to do. And maybe we need to figure out what is the most essential thing in this learning outcome and make a list of all the ways that we could achieve it, and then think of, does this way work well asynchronously outside class time? Because I think that take-home exams are actually better quality and better for learning than proctored exams, because in real life nobody is doing a proctored exam, right? Nobody becomes an engineer and someone is watching them. Nobody is a psychologist and someone is asking them to do multiple choice questions when they're giving a counseling session, right? So in real life, take-home exam is closer to real life. My husband, for example, is a surgeon. Of course, there are situations in his life where he has to make the decision and memorize and remember what needs to be done in an emergency situation. But a lot of times, a surgery is not an emergency, and he has time to research, to check, what are the different ways of doing this operation if they don't have experience with it. And if they have experience, they build the experience over time, right? It's not. The other thing is collaboration is also closer to real life. In real life, most people can collaborate to solve a problem. I know that you need to give everyone an individual grade, but where it makes sense in real life to do something collaboratively, then it makes sense for the assessment to be collaborative rather than saying, I want to make sure they haven't collaborated. You can say, how can I design my assignment to be collaborative so that they can benefit from working together? So that's sort of what I'm thinking about. If anything can be done the same way online and face-to-face, do that. For multi-section courses, can teachers share resources? Is it possible for one person to create the videos for module 1 and someone else to create the videos for module 2 and the assessments even? So that not everyone has to do everything. You can do less work and share with each other so that you have more time to focus on interacting with students. So let the videos and the things that can be done by someone else or shared amongst you be done that way, and focus on interacting with the students and making time for them, and see how you can have teaching assistants. So what we're trying to think about here is how can you achieve that learning outcome for everyone with a minimum workload. And so the exercise I want you to do now is think about this on your own and go to breakout rooms with a small number of other people and think about one of your learning outcomes, the different ways of doing it. What are the options for doing it? Which one would work for all the learners with minimal effort from you? And choose that one. Okay. So I'll give you, I think I'll ask to send people to the, I can't keep up with the chat, you guys. So I'm going to try to look at the chat while you're in breakout rooms. So Suleiman, would you like to put people in breakout rooms, or do you want me to try to do it? I think Zoom has a maximum of 50 breakout rooms and we have 260 people. So I guess there are going to be more than 3 people in a breakout room, but it's okay. Is Suleiman here? You're going to give me host access, or do you want to put people in breakout rooms yourself? I'm going to do random breakout rooms. It's really hard otherwise. And I'm going to look at the questions, Roxana, and then when they come back from the breakout rooms, I can respond to them. Is that good? I'll try to put them in the slides and respond to them. Okay, I am the host. Great. So I will put you all in breakout rooms automatically. So I'm going to do the maximum, which I think is 50. Okay, so this will be 5 to 6 participants. I'm sorry, I would have liked to give you more, but I think the maximum is 50. I don't think I can put more than that. I'm going to allow you to move to another breakout room if you want. If you have the latest version of Zoom, this would work. And let's see. No, I can't make you, I can't give you the option to move. But anyway, so you're 5 to 6 people per room. And I'll give you about, say, 12 minutes because I'm almost out of time, right, Roxana? I'll give you 10 minutes to do this and talk together.
We would love to have the full session, Maha, because these are skills we need to learn.
Okay, okay.
And these
So
are very good.
whenever, hopefully, so let me give you the 10 minutes to work together on this. And then Roxana, can you come back? Can you come back to the main room and tell me if we need to give people more time?
Okay,
Okay.
I'll do
All
that.
right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And I'll stay here and I'll look at the questions and start preparing my answers.
Yeah, I have sent you some
Okay.
unanswered questions anyway.
And Suleiman, I need to make him, I need to make Suleiman co-host again just so that he doesn't lose all of his access.
Yeah, no, but
Okay.
he could have helped make the breakout rooms as well. He's good at that.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
That's fine. All right. So yeah, I just put random breakout rooms anyway. It's not.
Okay, great. Thank
All
you.
right. Okay, I'm going to send you all out. So think about one of your essential learning outcomes, different ways you can do it, and pick one way that's more effective and works for all the students, and come back and share with us. But share in your room first and discuss it together if you're stuck or to get feedback. I'm picking up questions from the chat. There are a few people who are left in the room. I'm not really sure if they are on their way to the breakout rooms or if they're stuck here. Can you guys hear me? Jawad, Laiba, Ammar, Farhat, Farid, Mahwish, Asma, Athar. Maida, you're back.
Yes, I have my next session after
Yes,
you.
I know. I don't want to take up from your time. I love the
No,
topic of
please,
yours.
please go ahead. I'm only performing 2 activities and that's pretty much it. So it shouldn't take much time. Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to see if there are other questions. I mean, Roxana gave me some of the questions from the chat, but I think there were more questions in the chat. Okay, someone's calling me from the breakout room. I'm gonna
सुलेमान
जी मैडम
क्या कहते हैं आईटी वालों की तरफ से सिर्फ जिमरान आए हुए हैं आज
नहीं मैंने देखा था जिमरान को भी शाकिर और रहील तीनों को देखा था और शाहिद साहब भी हैं
अच्छा चलें ठीक है मतलब फिर जब एमएस टीम्स का होगा तो देन आई कैन गिव देम ए टेक्निकल क्वेश्चन सारे बिकॉज़ टेक्निकलिटी में
हाँ,
आई
हाँ।
डोंट वांट टू या चला सर
बिल्कुल ठीक हो गया
चलिए,
ठीक है
चलिए।
अच्छा इस कोई एक्टिविटी भी करवाओगे इस पे
एमएस टीम्स पे
हाँ जी या सिर्फ इंट्रोडक्शन
नहीं सिर्फ इंट्रोडक्शन है क्योंकि
ठीक
टाइम
है।
नहीं है एंड अभी सिर्फ हमने इनको लर्नर्स को बताना है कि वो कैसे
ठीक है
एक्सेस करेंगे
ठीक हो गया
और वो जो मूडल
ठीक है।
इंटीग्रेशन हमने की है दैट्स
ठीक है ठीक ओके
चलिए सही थैंक यू I don't know if you're speaking something. Your mic is muted.
Yeah, there are some people who are not assigned and they're here in the main room, but I can't move them to another room for some
Yeah,
reason.
so there's an option if they have updated their Zoom client, they can click on more and then they can join themselves. I can see that
Yeah.
option for myself.
Yeah, but it's even if they haven't, I should still be able to move them outside their control. But maybe it's a new thing with a new version of Zoom. Because they've created that, maybe they make it more difficult. But I mean, if they're not in a room, when they click more, they can only go to rooms that I've sent them, right? I tried to do, you know, this new option where they can move when you can move yourself to any breakout room.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
only works if I assign them manually. But if I assign them randomly, I can't allow them to.
But when I click on join
It's a bit
breakout room, I can join all the rooms which have been
co-host.
created.
Because you're a
I'm a
co-host.
co-host.
That's
Oh,
why.
oh, oh, oh. Okay.
It was always possible for co-hosts. If you're not a co-host, you have to have extra access, which is possible now, but you can't do it with the random breakout rooms. It's weird. Like they should allow it for any option, right? Because there are 200 plus people. I can't do manual breakout rooms with that number.
That's true.
It's too many.
Can you please make me a regular attendee, not a co-host, so I can check the other option as well?
Okay, I'm gonna do that
how
now.
Yeah, thank you. Great. Yeah, it disappears.
Yeah, I mean, you should still be able to.
Yeah, I can go back to room number 12.
To the same one, right? Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
That's true. That's true.
So it's almost time to bring people back. Unfortunately, some people, even though there's groups of 6, it seems that some people ended up in a group alone because everyone else is not really there, which is understandable. Like with 200 people, how are you going to make sure that everyone is actually awake and focused the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's almost time to bring everyone back, actually. Just going to tell them 1 more minute. And I'm going to check the questions that were in the chat. There were some people who sent me private questions, so it's a little bit trickier to get them. So Roxana hadn't seen those. Okay. All right, almost time. Just like 15 seconds left. And people started to come back on their own. Hi, Dr. Trimble. Roxana was telling me about you.
Oh, nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you too.
My breakout room, everyone was muted and nobody came online.
I heard that. It's very difficult with this kind of large group to know who's sitting when. I just assumed that people were there.
Yes.
Sorry to hear that.
It was a great activity. We are back. Maha, did you get to the questions I posted to you in the chat?
Yes,
I did.
I did.
Yeah, I'll try to keep on sending them.
Yeah, I got them, and I got some private questions as well. Let me see. Yeah, it looks like everyone's back. Yeah. Okay, great. Welcome back, everyone. I'm sorry, I heard that some of you were alone in your breakout rooms. There were supposed to be 5 or 6 people in each room, but maybe some people were not sitting in front of their desk at the time. I hope that those of you who did have someone in your breakout room took time to discuss it together and you had an interesting conversation. Would anyone like to share some of what they came up with in obviously each person has a different learning outcome. Like I couldn't put you in groups with someone who's teaching the same course because that would be very complicated to do. Okay, go ahead, Mascom Altaf Khan, go ahead. Please unmute yourself. Oh, you can't unmute. Let me unmute him. I unmuted you. Okay.
Yeah, we discussed it, and since we were from English and mass comm and mathematics and business. So we were kind of different, and we thought that we can't come up with one, because the one general outcome is kind of making students capable of dealing with real life situations, well, because it's a very general one. That's what universities are for. So we decided to have our own, each one amongst us. For me, the course that I'm going to teach right now, it's media system in Pakistan. So the basic outcome would be that students should understand when they do the course, they understand how the media market will behave, and you design a course which has those steps where they develop an understanding to find that final outcome, which is understanding the real life environment, because we have a lot of feedback coming from media that students don't know how the media market works. So you teach them history in a way that they really understand how are government relations with the press, how is the society's relation with the press, what is the financial market, and how does social media affect, and things like that. So we just decided to have one objective and how it leads to that one each. So this is just mine.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll go next for Hira, and then Dr. Sunil, and then Muhammad Y.O. I can't see the rest of the name, but I just want to respond to something in the chat here. There was just someone who wrote, interesting session, but showed two potential issues: how to ensure full participation of each group member and internet connectivity. So just to let you know, in my own classes, when I'm doing breakout rooms work, first of all, I make smaller groups of 3 or something where it's easier, and they ask them to write their name and to take notes in a Google document or slides. I'm not doing this for you today because this is just an informal session, but I usually don't have 200 students. I have like 17 or 19. If I had 30 or 40, I could still manage, but like 200 plus, there's no way I think you can know that everyone is awake. So you have to let them know though that they will be doing an activity. So what happens, like I go to a lot of conferences where I have to listen passively for 3 hours. So of course I leave my computer and I don't sit the whole time. That's normal behavior. But if people know this is a workshop, they know they will have to talk to other people, they know they will do activities. If they get used to that this type of session is like that, they know to stay. So when they come to our workshops at CLT, the faculty, we have 70, which is a big number too. They know that they're going to talk, and nobody ever says I went to a breakout room and no one was there. It's just that the expectation of, someone has, how interactive the session will be will make a difference to whether people stay or leave. Or, it's okay. Some people are bored. It's fine. They have something else to do. They have another priority. Like the internet can be bad. And when I know someone's internet is bad, I keep them in the main room so they don't get disconnected when we go to the breakout rooms. So that's also another way of dealing with it. And then if someone misses the activity completely, you can ask them to meet outside of the class by phone to work in pairs and do the same activity. So this is how I would deal with it. Okay, so Hira first, and then Dr. Sunil and Muhammad, and then Mehwish also wants to give feedback. So Hira first.
So hi, this is Hira. So actually in our group, we have the very diverse group because we were having the participant member from the writing, chemistry, biology, and some other departments. So basically our first challenge was, which we were discussing collectively, was the student to engage in discussion, that how to ensure the active participation of every student. So we come up with the very good strategies that every member has shared. So it covers the presentation that you ask in a smaller group, that every student is presenting in a 1 minute to 2 minute presentation. So you are able to see that what either if he or she was not able in a writing or managing the data, but when you are presenting, so they have put some effort on it. And the second was that there were some of the deliberately designed questions, because you are asking the question which have the more than one correct answer. So you are not asking the question which are very fixed one. So they just do the copy paste, so they can answer you that what is the, in their opinion. So they are basically covering the concept one. And the third one was the Google document, where they invite the students and they can collectively add it or share their thoughts so they can check that one. So, and fourth point was the rubric has worked for one of our members. So they just enjoy, and this covers also that you are basically entertaining or addressing the core concept, and then you are allowing the student that they are answer you in a flex or relaxed time, that they have not the very limited time span, so they can think about that question and they can answer you. So that was a very healthy discussion we had there.
Thank you so much. That's quite a lot of good ideas. And the one where you mentioned the Google Docs has a very special space because it's semi-synchronous. The ones who are together could do it together, but the ones who aren't can do it afterwards, and they can still participate in the same activity, right? But just not at the same time. And the one thing that I don't know what the situation is with you, but maybe the students who are face-to-face might not have a great device to bring into the classroom. So they may not be able to participate on the Google Doc themselves, but if they're sitting in a group of 3 or 4, then you need one device for every 4 people, or you can do it in a space on, I don't know if you have a campus where you have labs or whatever. So that's also important to think, like we're also thinking about the asynchronous folks that they don't have infrastructure, but the ones who are in class might not have a powerful device, or their phone might be out of charge. Like a lot of times my students are charging their phone while they're in the classroom and there aren't enough plugs, right? So that's important to keep that in mind.
So that maybe again can be addressed that we choose some of one of the lead and they can bring their device and then they can answer that.
Exactly. So like make it like pairs, groups of 2 or 3 or 4, so to make sure that there are enough devices to go around. Yeah. Okay, Sunil. Unmute your, oh, I need to unmute you. Hang on. Okay. Is that working? Let me make you co-host. It's a bit easier. I'm sorry, there are going to be a lot of co-hosts at the end of this session. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Maha. There were a couple of us in the group, and several of us, when we talked about two things. That first of all, in order to do the assessment, we have to be very clear about what are the objectives of the course. And we looked at it in general terms, and there are two things that we came up with that sums things up. One is that in whatever course we're teaching, there has to be competence, that we should look at that what should the student, in terms of content, what knowledge, what do we want them to learn, and what skills we want them to learn through that, and that's the competence. And the other thing is basically the character, that what kind of person would that person become after taking that course with us. And I think these two things go hand in hand. What good is it that we produce students who go out into the world and who have great knowledge, the best competence, but they're not really good human beings?
Yes,
and what good is the other if they're really good human beings, but they lack the content, the knowledge? So I think though we thought that both of these things go hand in hand. And there are several strategies that could be applied. But these things have to go hand in hand. And I think discussions is quite an important thing. Having a recap sheet, an open chat room, these are some of the things that could be done. And then sometimes having a one-to-one private conversation with 1 or 2 students would also be helpful, because we have to keep this thing in mind that our culture, collectivistic culture, that sometimes there's shame involved, and we don't want to call somebody out in the group, but have a private discussion, keeping that in mind.
Yes, and you can do that with all 3 modalities, right? With the asynchronous, if you can use the phone or WhatsApp or something. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I love your contribution. Thank you very much. And I love what's coming out in the chat when I can catch it. I'm trying to respond to both at the same time. Okay, so there's everyone who had said they wanted to speak now has co-host access. So I know there was Wasim, Muhammad, and Mahwish. Mahwish, do you want to go first? Did I give you access to unmute yourself?
Thank
hello.
you so much.
Can I let Mahwish go first and then Muhammad Yunus? Is that okay?
Yeah. Okay, no problem. I can wait.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, go
Thank
ahead.
you so much. So we were quite a few in the group, and since we all teach different subjects, so we had a general discussion instead of writing an objective. And we discussed that learning objectives that focus on knowledge, comprehension, synthesis, and evaluation, valuing in the affective domain, receiving and responding. These could be the objectives, learning objectives could be suitable for concurrent teaching in different modalities, irrespective of the learning setting of the students. learning objectives that are planned around these, the cognitive domain and the affective domain could be easily handled in varying learning setting. That's what we talked about.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Mohammed Yunus. It's not unmuting. Oh.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
can you hear
we
me?
can. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Actually, we were some 5 people in one group, and all were from different departments. I mean, so it was very difficult for us to think of a common objective or a learning outcome of a course. But our discussion was stimulated by the comments of one of our colleagues, and she mentioned that we worked very hard during this spring semester. We were to synchronous teaching and also asynchronous teaching, and she took classes online as well. But the student satisfaction that we received through the survey was not according to our expectations. So what we were looking for is that uh, a learning outcome could be the satisfaction of the students with the course. What way of teaching, face-to-face, synchronous or asynchronous, could be effective in doing so? This is a kind of question that we want to have for you as well to answer. But the second thing what we were looking for and discussed is that how can we make our asynchronous teaching more interactive? This is also a question. So what I'm doing is I'm actually not mentioning some of the outcomes, rather putting some questions for you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I'm gonna, Roxana, you want to say something before I move on?
I just wanted to add to what Mavish said. In our group, actually, we did feel that, and especially the psychomotor competency of the student would need to be differently assessed for the different. So the learning objective would change. In fact, one in our group did say that if I were to expect from the 2 categories of students, sync and in person, X and Y and Z, I would probably not expect only X in terms of psychomotor and practical skills from the asynchronous group, because they would not have the facility to either see demonstration or either see a practical or whatever,
But
even though
no, but I disagree with you actually, because how many times have you watched an exercise video online and copied what they were doing? As long as it's, for example, if I do a yoga class, I usually end up with my back hurting me because they don't tell me if you have a back problem, how do you modify? So you can do video recordings of psychomotor things, but with warnings and adaptations. So say, do this, but if you don't have this at home, you can do that. If you have this disability, do it like that. It is completely possible. I have done theater of the oppressed. I don't know if any of you know theater of the oppressed, but it's it's theater for critical pedagogy purposes. And they do a lot of physical activity online. And then if you're not there, you could still record yourself doing it and send that video to your teacher to see. Like we know people, they practice piano and someone records their hands while they're playing the piano. They're doing ballet and they have a family member videotape them while they're doing the ballet, or they put the computer far away from them and they film themselves and they send the asynchronous recording. It's not perfect, but you can achieve it to some extent. And I'm going to answer the questions that came in the chat earlier now and try to wrap up. And then if anybody wants to email me later, I'm going to have my email. You can come back and email me. It's not the end of our interaction together, inshallah. Okay. So there was a question about assignments can be based on equity, right? But how about the final generalized exam? And I think the final generalized exam can be a take-home exam too. Like, I don't know why people tend to think that the final exam has to be proctored. The belief that a proctored exam is the best assessment needs to be questioned. There is nothing in real life that is a final proctored exam. That's not the way life is. I once took a course about first aid with the Red Cross, and the exam was a multiple choice exam. And do you know what happened after I took the course and I took that assessment? I was never confident to do first aid to anyone because the assessment didn't test my actual skill in performing first aid. This is really important to think about what Sunil was talking about. You're trying to develop a human being who can do things, who can be an engineer, who can be a psychologist, who can be a historian. And that kind of thing cannot be assessed with a final exam, by the way, even if it's a critical thinking final exam. But a take-home exam could be. It's similar to doing research. It's similar to spending your time with something. So this is my opinion on that. It may seem radical, I know, but this is what I believe. Even with the very basic mathematics for children, their exams should be about solving a problem of going to buy something from the supermarket and getting the money back rather than being given two numbers and adding them together. You know. All right, from chemistry, Dr. Dildar Ahmed, recording face-to-face learning activities is a big problem. How to solve this? I don't think you should be recording face-to-face learning activities. So if there are activities where students are working together, you don't need to record them. They're working in small groups anyway, right? So have the synchronous people do the learning activity together online and have the asynchronous people do it in pairs by phone. So if they need to do it as a group, let them do it, but just not during the same time that everyone else is doing it. It's still doable. And then this question I got privately. It was how from Musawar, I think. What could be the fallout of having the face-to-face and the synchronous class simultaneously? The biggest fallout, I think, of having them both is that you will focus on the face-to-face and you will ignore the synchronous class completely. You as the teacher, you're a human being, you're one person, you can only be doing one thing at the same time. You need someone to help make sure that if the synchronous people want to participate, that they get heard. You need the teaching assistants, you need one student who's helping out, looking at both at the same time. And this is why this high flex model is very, very difficult. Like somebody will be disadvantaged if there isn't someone helping out. There's no way. So you can either have the teaching assistant be online with the students but catching your attention in some way, or the teaching assistant can be in the classroom with you and helping. Then getting students in the classroom to work with students on the synchronous mode. So this is one of the very tricky ones. If you want to do in small groups, I would suggest you do it outside of class time, because if they're using the Wi-Fi of the classroom, you're already streaming what's happening in the class, and you're already, and then students are using their own devices. How much Wi-Fi do you have on campus to make it easy without noise, for people in the classroom to be talking to the people who are synchronous? If you want to do group work, I would do it in one of three ways. Either the students in the class are doing group work together and the students who are synchronous are doing group work together in breakout rooms. That's one option. The second option is to do it outside of class time, but ask them to meet in small groups in pairs, because in the classroom it's going to be too noisy if all of them are talking to someone else on a device. And then the third option is, once you take it outside the class time, this kind of interaction, then they can do it, all of them, with the synchronous and the asynchronous, because everybody can talk to each other on the phone or have a WhatsApp group or something, a space that they can all access equally. So that's important to keep in mind, assuming that they all have access to a mobile device, that they can use for that. I hope this is helpful. Again, I think I've mentioned all of these things before, and you guys have the slides. Yeah, I think I've answered actually all of this.
Yeah.
Okay. And these are examples of assessments. Someone mentioned something about how when you're in the classroom, you can quickly get feedback and know that a student understands or doesn't understand. If you have smaller classes, you can do oral exams for everyone if you want, or oral verification. Like sometimes they can do the exam as open book, take home, whatever, but then there's some kind of oral verification that's short and not like very stressful or anything, but just to make sure that the student can talk about what they've written. Things like portfolio assessments gives them options to include everything and reflect on everything they've learned throughout the semester. And definitely research essays and projects instead of exams, or things that, whatever their modality, they can join in. There was someone talking about, when you were asking about recording face-to-face, if you actually meant recording the actual lecture, if you talk for a very long time, then you might as well record that in advance and let students work on it. Watch it, then all of them will have access to the same video recording, and then the activity are ones that they will do slightly differently. So that's one other way to save time. So you're saving time. You don't have to repeat the lecture in class because you've recorded it for the students, but then you can spend the class time doing problem solving. And then if you're doing the problem solving, maybe you take one question from the students who are in the class and one question from the students who are synchronous, let them work together a little bit, and then all come back together and find a way to make sure that you're listening to both of them. And pause for questions. I think if you're having the synchronous and the face-to-face students at the same time, make sure that you have a system where you pause for questions every 10 minutes and you check with the synchronous if they have questions. Or ask them to write all their questions in the chat and keep checking the chat while you're teaching, but it's going to be very distracting, to be honest. I think it is better if you have someone else who's helping you take the questions, or a student who's in the classroom, who's reading aloud the questions that the synchronous students are saying. Does that make sense? So I'm done here with what I was planning to talk about for today. And I'm going to keep my screen open so that you can get my email address. I think I'm gonna copy paste all of this. Thank you all so much for your participation. You've been such a wonderful group. I've really enjoyed listening to your ideas and your questions as well.